What's up guys, this is Saiyan here coming at you with another Dragon Ball CCG deck profile today, and I'm continuing my series in looking at set specific decks, and today I have set 3 for you guys. It's still a sunny day. Yes, I have only just recorded the set 2 video right before this one, but let's jump into this one now. Set 3, probably one of my favorite sets, I would say. Destructive Fury, just an amazing set, really. So many of the fan favorite cards are in there. You get Final Form Cell, even though it's not necessarily a super playable card. It's an amazing looking card. Of course, you have the infamous Super Saiyan 3 Goku in this particular set, but you also have a lot of Evil Tribe resurgence in there. We have Super Godlick Jr., we have Dabra, we have Yakon, some of these guys as well. Piccolo JR has finally been printed in this set, and so I themed this particular deck around running basically unique with Alien. And it's Alien because we are running these guys, and you know these guys by now. Oh dear, Captain Ginyu. So let's jump into this deck. Right, so okay, what have we got here? We are starting out with turn 0 Warriors. As usual, we are running 3 Piccolo Juniors. Honestly, definitely in the top 3 best turn 0 Warriors in my list at least. And of course, what we can do with this little guy is we can evolve him into this Piccolo on turn 4. So basically we do break the turn cost system a little bit. This is why I keep saying Piccolo Jr. is amazing. You don't have any other 0 drops that have evolution. And not only evolution, but it's evolution 4, so you can cheat out these turn 6 Piccolos, this one, and the one from set 5. You can also cheat out the turn 5 one from set 1, even a turn earlier, so that's all amazing, amazing, amazing stuff. So we start out obviously with 3 Piccolo Juniors, and the second best 0 drop in this particular set is Ninja Murasaki. So we run a 3 of. He's Red Ribbon Army, but doesn't really mean much to us in this particular setup. Now I'm only running 6 turn 0 cards. There isn't much else I would really want to run in this particular setup, but that leaves space for 2 E-Skies, and E-Sky is basically almost a reprint of King Kai from set 1. The only difference between those 2 guys is that this Kai is going to give +0/+2, so you get 2 support value to one of your warriors, whereas King Kai will give +2/+0. So obviously your lead warrior is going to be pumped by King Kai. But this lady is just as playable, is just as good, and I highly recommend her. If you can't get King Kai from set 1, just run E-Skies because they virtually do the same thing. Same stats, same turn cost, even the effect is the same except the powers, because King Kai will get +2/+0, and that's the only difference really. Then jumping into the Ginyu Force, unfortunately we do have to run Goldo. He is not a good card by any means. I am still tinkering with ideas how to make him a little bit more playable, but to get the Dragon Ball onto him and to make sure that his team gets an outstanding victory is quite an undertaking, and it does require quite a few different cards to be ran, just for a benefit that you then might not be able to capitalize on anyway, because you might not have the cards in your hand that you are going to need. So if you manage to pull off Guldo's ability and jump 2 turns, okay, so your turn 3 is going to now be your turn 5. There are some other questions that you need to think about there. Do you have enough chi to play some of your big guys? Have you done the right setup? Do you have cards in play that make worthwhile playing that particular card? Maybe, maybe not. So it does take a lot of working around, and he is a bad card just because if it didn't need the Dragon Ball, or if it didn't need to have an outstanding victory, or even if he had both of them, but at least he had some reasonable stats, because the 2-1-1-1 is such a massive hindrance. Just like wasting your 2-drop for a 2-1-1-1 is ridiculous. If you think about other 2-drops, think about General Blue. He's a 3-2, he has Plunder, he takes somebody out of your opponent's team. Just so many better cards than this particular guy, and that's pretty much the fault with the Ginyu Force overall is their usability. We run 3 Jace because he's sort of like well, he's our 3-drop guy. Again, if you look at his stats, he's a 3-2-1-2. I mean, if you think about General Blue from a set previous, he's a 3-2. Yes, he's a 0-0 if he gets injured, but that guy also has Plunder. He has immediate functionality as you play him. This guy does nothing except having ally Bertha, and yes, if you do manage to get 4 of these guys down, one of them being Bertha, then you can get all 4 of them into one team, which can be good. But again, Bertha isn't one of those cards that is like extremely good. But there are reasons why we're running Ginyu Force, and I know I'm slating them right now, but it's going to make sense. In the set 3 vacuum, it makes sense to run these guys. So let's get to that point. Obviously, we do run 2 Bertha, and again, Bertha would be a really good card, and I even like the artwork on this guy. I think the card, it looks really solid, and he's got really good support value. When he comes down, he's a 4/3, and if you have 2 additional Ginyu Force warriors in play when you play this guy, then you get to draw a card. I mean, what if it was 1 additional? Because then it would make sense that, okay, you have Jace down and Jace and Bertha work together. But no, you need 2 additional warriors, and that just deflates my interest in general when I look at Bertha. When I generally look at Ginyu Force as a whole and thinking about building a deck around them. But again, in the set 3 vacuum, it is playable, and one of the reasons why we do run Goldo is to be able to draw that card of Bertha. We do run 2 Recoome, and he is probably, he's definitely the second best Ginyu Force card that we have in the game right now. Toughness is fairly good, but it's kind of unnecessary. But that fierce one is really good, and his stats are actually pretty solid for a 4-drop. That 5-1-4-0 is definitely something to be reckoned with, especially if you got Recoome, you got Bertha behind him. So if they all come down, but obviously Recoome will be your turn 5 drop because Bertha is turn 4, and so is Recoome. So you have to really make a decision which guy you want to play first. It kind of gives you a little bit of a flexibility. If you like have Bertha in your hand and Recoome in your hand, I would recommend to play Recoome turn 4 and then play Bertha turn 5. If you don't have Captain Ginyu in your hand. Now, if you do have Captain Ginyu in your hand, you will most definitely play this guy on turn 5. He is by far, obviously, the best Ginyu Force card. He is the only Ginyu Force card, though, that actually costs you a chi. He does cost you 1 blue chi, but he's a 6-1-4-1, which is already really good. And finally, one with a valid ability. Obviously, besides Ally Bertha, Ally is a valid ability as well. So is Fierce 1 and Toughness, but like a useful non-keyword effect is what I'm talking about here, really. But again, you need 2 or other Ginyu Force warriors, which I do. It does make sense with Ginyu. It doesn't make sense with Bertha. Bertha should be, if you control 1 or more other Ginyu Force warriors and draw a card, then he would be a lot better. But he is still requiring 2 or more. But Captain Ginyu makes sense. He requires 2 or more other Ginyu Force warriors, and he gets Thresh 1, and he gets +1/+1. So the main reason why you want to play all the other chumps besides Recoome is to get Captain Ginyu out. So the payoff should come when you when you actually manage to get Captain Ginyu out, because he is a really, really strong card. Just 6-1-4-1 on its own is good, but if he's a 7-2, a 5-2, that's even better. And a Thresh 1, obviously, that's just a really, really good combination there. And still, obviously, in the mentality of set 3, of course, Mecha Frieza is definitely one of the best OG warriors that you get in set 3. He's actually a promo card. I do believe that there was an intention from Bandai to have a new starter deck released for set 3, and Mecha Frieza and Great Saiyan and the University or College Gohan, or however some people call him, High School Gohan, yeah, that's the one. Those were, I think, supposed to be in another starter that actually never materialized. So instead they released some of these specific cards as promos, which is great. At least we got the cards. But again, this guy, Mecha Frieza, it's a bit expensive, yes, 2 Alien Chi, turn cost of 6. but he is such an easy one to play. If you think about the set 1, set 2 Frieza lineup, you really need to get the starters deck Frieza, which still blows my mind that you need to get the starter to be able to go through the whole chain to get to final form. And then set 2 we had final full power form, which is, it's a good card, but it's just so difficult to get it out. So why not use Mecha Frieza? If you want a bit of that Frieza flavor, run this guy in the action phase, whether you're an attacker or defender. As long as he's got a Dragon Ball and you have a free Alien Chi, you can give 1 damage to target opposing warrior with a turn cost of 4 or less. So 4 or less, so you can damage, warriors like Recoome, Berter. If your opponent has a Piccolo JR out, you can, maybe you've attacked into it. The Piccolo JR is just about limping away, being in injury status. You then bring Frieza out if he's defending with that Piccolo JR in a team. You can get rid of the Piccolo JR. They will have a much more difficult time in evolving to some of the higher cost Piccolos. But that's, of course, if they didn't hit the Piccolos by turn 6, which is debatable. But it's got so much utility, and at 7-2-4-1, again, if we look at Captain Ginyu, their stats are very, very, very similar. If Ginyu has another 2 guys out, then he's just as strong as Mecha Frieza, which I suppose from a flavor value doesn't necessarily make much sense. But then if you think about the ability for him to be able to just basically shoot guys, he is a very, very strong, very good card. And anyway, in the set 3 vacuum, Mecha Frieza is a very, very decent card, however I look at it. And then finally, obviously I've talked about the 2 Piccolos, so I'm not really going to dwell on these. This guy is basically, he just has toughness and that's it. He's extremely good in supporting. That 7-4-0-4 is really, really good. And if the set 5 Piccolo wouldn't have come out, I would be running this in conjunction with Piccolo Jr. because stats-wise, it's a little bit better, but if you get the set 5 Piccolo, that obviously discards a card from your opponent's hand as long as he's got a Dragon Ball every time you send that guy out to attack, which is huge. So that card advantage value that Piccolo generates is amazing. But if that wouldn't exist, this one's definitely the second best. I also opted to run 2 Majin Boos. I just wanted a somewhat versatile, really heavy hitter guy, and he fits the bill. He's healthy and injury values are amazingly good. That 5 support is just mind-blowingly amazing. Plus, if you're attacking with this guy, you can pay any generic 1 chi, and you can give him +3/-3, making him an 8-2, which is exactly the same stat as Kid Buu has from set 5. So you can see that they carried on that particular flavor, which I absolutely love. But he's mostly in there for his support. If you get guys like Mecha Frieza down, or even Piccolo, if you just have Piccolo down and he can't go into a support role, then he can go and be the obviously leader of the team, head warrior. You get a team of 12. But if you got Mecha Freezer out, you put these 2 guys behind him, and you have a team of 16, which is it's ridiculous. If you get to that point, obviously we are talking about turn 7 here, but you gotta have a late game plan if you want to win in this particular card game. So going through, yes, the start can be a little bit clunky, and you should definitely expect to take a few planet damage. But if you're lucky enough and your mulligan's good enough, then you can just follow roughly the Ginyu curve and get these guys out and go from there. Now, where Ginyu Force really shines is particularly the events, but also one of the main reasons why anybody should consider running Ginyu Force is Recoome Bomber. This is a very strong, very effective pump technique, and definitely something that should not be overlooked if you are ever thinking about running a Ginyu Force deck. It's not obviously specific to Recoome, but it does have a requirement of a Ginyu Force Warrior, but you can use it from turn 3 onwards, and it costs you 2 chi. So if you compare it to Evil Cannon, yes, Evil Cannon is turn 2 onwards, but that one will give you +3/+0. This one will give you +4/+0 for any of your Ginyu Force guys, which is really good. Honestly, It's a super good card, and the only other card I would maybe consider changing this to is the set 5 Powerful Heritage, just purely because then that allows you to splash a couple of Saiyans like Turtles or Vegeta or any of those guys, and those guys will get 5 out of it. But I think Powerful Heritage is anyway a way too overpowered card for its own good. If it would be requirement Saiyan, then if it would give maybe 4, just like Recoome Bomber, then I think it would be a balanced card. But obviously, set 5 they were pushing it, and they weren't following Bandai's card design anymore, and that's maybe one of the reasons why this game has failed anyway. We do run 3 expanding vibration. I am not 100% sold on the unique splash in this deck, but this particular card is the best counter in the game in my opinion, and it only requires 1 out of the 3 chi to be unique. So it's actually, it's playable. You can definitely use it. You just again need to think ahead as to, would you rather play a Recoome Bomber when you're defending, or would you expect your opponent to play something? So yeah, it's got its place in the deck, and definitely one of the best techniques from set 3, but it definitely is worth consideration whether you are going to run it or not. And that's it for techniques, because I did say that where Ginyu Force really shines is, of course, the events. And the first event I'm going to show you, it's a generic event, but obviously it's Ginyu Force flavor. The guys got their new scanners, and this is honestly an extremely good draw engine for any alien deck. Time limit of 3, which is quite common. Like if you look at UFO landing, that's got a time limit of 3 as well. And rather than fulfilling a particular objective or losing our card advantage over time, which you kind of do with if you're running mystery pots or you're running fading riches, this particular event just gives you a much better card selection. Instead of drawing a card, you look at the top 2 cards in your draw step, you pick one of them that goes into your hand, and then the second one you can manipulate. You can either leave it on the top, and then you can charge it to chi, or you can put it to the bottom, and then hopefully, go through that deck quicker. So I honestly think that this card is, in my eye, it's definitely growing to the level of UFO landing. Even though UFO landing obviously is a straight up draw an additional card at the end of your turn, to get 3 of the same characteristic cards down, like to get 3 Ginyu Force guys down or get 3 Frieza family cards down. You will never have that in turn 1. I mean, the earliest you're gonna get that is turn 2. So even if you think about the functionality of UFO landing, it looks very tempting that it's a turn cost of 1. But I think one of the reasons why they put that card to turn cost of 1 is just to balance some of the adventure cards out. So when you put that into your deck, you can't then take advantage of running adventure cards. If that would have a higher turn cost, you can easily win better with adventure type cards. So this isn't a straight up card advantage by no means, but it is a really good unconditional card selection card. And if you are new to building decks, highly recommend you to start to play around with this card. It can really help you to run your decks more efficiently. Now, and normally, and this is Ginyu Force specific, Ginyu Force Gather, I don't normally tend to run this card, because I used to think that it's very limited, but then I did use it, and it's only a one-off copy, but I'm seriously considering in updating that and maybe running at least 2, potentially 3. For a Ginyu Force build, I have converted. You definitely need Ginyu Force gathered in that deck. If you think, if you compare these 2 cards, New Scanner and Ginyu Force Gather, basically the turn New Scanner comes down, he's not going to do anything because you've already done your draw step. So the beginning of the next turn, you take a time limit counter down, and then you're going to go into your draw step. So you can basically use New Scanner 3 times. Ginyu Force Gathered only comes down with a time limit of 1, but you can still use it twice. You use it the turn when it comes down, and then you use it the next turn when you take that 1 time limit counter off. So actually, the difference is 1 turn. Yes, this card will be useful in additional turn. It's not straight up card advantage though. If you use Ginyu Force Gathered for free during your strategy phase when you're the attacker, you can search the top 4 for a Ginyu Force card, reveal it, put it in your hand, shuffle the deck. That's card advantage straight up, as long as you hit a Ginyu Force card on the top 4. Now if you use these two in conjunction, and what I would highly recommend is play New Scanner first, then play Ginyu Force Gathered, because then you can manipulate the deck. You have a higher chance of drawing into a Ginyu Force card if this is in play, but it's difficult to find space for both of these cards, and if you're just going on pure card advantage, and you're happy to manipulate your deck in a way where you know you're going to be charging some of your Ginyu Force cards into your chi, then you should definitely consider running this card. Why? Because obviously you would have to run a higher amount of Ginyu Force cards. You might have to run 3 Goldos, you might have to run additional Recoome or an additional Birder, which is not necessarily a bad thing, to be honest. Just gives you a much higher chance of actually hitting something, getting that card advantage. And God forbid you got 2 different Ginyu Force cards in that top 4, which did happen to me, then you even have card selection. So all in all, a good card. Definitely on par with New Scanner now that I've used it, and I'm sort of seeing the light on this card as well. Again, just running with the control theme, what unique brings us, I have 2 Ball of Seal, which comes down time limit of 3 is actually, again, it's a long time, particularly because you're going to put this card into use the turn when it comes down. You name a card, and that card cannot be played or used. So if your opponent has, let's say, your opponent has a Berter in play, you play Ball of Seal, you name Berter. From that point on, that Berter is, because it can't be used, it will then get dropped out of the team. It can't be put into any of the teams. It can't be sacrificed. It's basically like it's not in play. And you can also not play the card that you name. So it's basically a straight up negate, but you do need to understand what your opponent's running, which is not too difficult to understand in this game, because you will see your opponent charge cards into their chi, so you're never really going to be randomly naming cards. You're going to get quite a lot of information. Ball of the Seal, yes, it's a turn cost of 4, which is quite high, but it's only costing you 1 unique chi, so it's all in all a great card. And of course, the main reason why you want to consider running Ginyu Force is the Special Fighting Pose, which again is a promo card that came out with set 3. Turn cost of 5 is a little bit expensive, but again, it only costs you 1 Alien Chi. And if you have 3 or more Ginyu Force Warriors, they all get toughness, and that's why I said Recoome's toughness is a little bit redundant. Because if you're not running this card with Ginyu Force, then you probably shouldn't even run Ginyu Force. What you really want to get is the second effect there. If you have 4 or more Ginyu Force Warriors, they all get +0/+1. That's where your Jace becomes a lot more usable. That's where your Berter becomes a lot more usable. Your Jace will be a 3/3, your Berter will be a 4/4. Even your Goldo is going to be a 2/2, so even Goldo can be a somewhat reasonable support warrior once this card is down. And then if you get 5 of them down, all 5 of them is down, then they basically cannot be targeted or affected by your opponent's technique effects, so they become immune to techniques, which is amazing. As long as obviously this event stays in play, and as long as your opponent doesn't have specific warriors or events that can still affect your Ginyu Force guys. Of course, there are loads of cards in there, but basically what the last ability is good against is minus abilities that can come from unique cards, like your opponent can't use Hell Flash on these guys if they're running an Android build. Your opponent can't use Exploiting the Weak on these guys. Your opponent can't use the what's the other one? Anyway, there's loads of different techniques that can be used, but it doesn't give you that high of a protection that you would think it would. Your opponent's warriors can still target themselves, so they can still pump themselves up, and they can still do all sorts of different things. So to me, the biggest effect here is the +0/+1. But then why not run Cold Legacy? Or why not run Base of Operations? Or why not run just more pumps? It's hard enough to get 3 of these guys down consistently, let alone 4. So again, with this particular card, at least if it was a turn cost of 4, then I would say, oh, this completely justifies running Ginyu Force. It doesn't really, but it certainly, if you take this card out of vacuum and then you start to look at, okay, well, we can run special fighting pose, we can run Recoome Bomber, and then we can run Ginyu Force Gathered. If you then start to look at all these cards together, then it kind of starts to see that yes, there is value in running Ginyu Force. The only additional support that Ginyu Force got was another Captain Ginyu in the body of Goku, which came out in set 4. And that's a turn cost 1 warrior with, I think he's a 3-2. So he's actually, if he's not injured, he's very powerful, but he's a vanilla card, he doesn't do anything. Plus then you kind of need to eventually, when you get to like turn 3, turn 4, you need to sacrifice him, because you can't just play your other Captain Ginyu if that guy is in play, because you can't have 2 warriors with the same name in play unless you have like a specific effect on the card that allows you to do that, or you have a specific effect like alternate future and you would name Captain Ginyu, then you could pull it off, yeah, but otherwise you can't. Now that might be a build that I might do one day, running alternate future with Ginyu Force. But then again, that would still kind of restrict you, because each alternate future you need to use for one specific warrior name. So it's a possibility, and it's definitely a thought of a somewhat fun deck to build. But this is it for now, guys. This is my set 3 Ginyu Force / unique deck profile, and the sun's now started to shine. We also had hail whilst I was switching over from the previous video to this one. So absolutely crazy weather. I think this is still Hurricane Ciara or Kiara. I don't know how they call it. It's certainly with a C. So probably not a Kiara, but it depends whether you speak British English or American English. Doesn't really matter. I'm just blabbering about now. I hope you enjoyed this deck profile, guys, and stay tuned, because we will obviously soon have a set 4 and then a set 5 deck as well. I may have another set 3 deck, to be honest. We are still obviously playing around with these set 3 decks. And the biggest learning for me was Ginyu Force Gathered is actually a really good card, so you definitely want to consider running this if you're running Ginyu Force. Before I thought you can just run it with New Scanner, but this is actually a sweet card. Anyway, YouTube, Bussy and sign out. Peace out, YouTube.